And I'll call the steering committee meeting to order. First item on our agenda is the reading and approval of the minutes, and I call on Vice Chair Turner.
Mr. Chairman, I've read the minutes, I reviewed them, I found them in order. I make a motion for their approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Did someone say no? I thought okay. First item is to fill a vacancy on the Board of Zoning Appeals to fill the unexpired term of Jared Barrett, and this term would expire in October 2021. We have three applicants today here, Mr. Joe Crowell, Mr. Leslie Smith Jr., and Mr. William Hopper. At this time, we will invite each of the candidates to make a statement and give us time to ask any questions if we have any, explain why you would be interested in this position. Mr. Joe Crowell.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Joe Crowell. My wife Nancy and I have lived in the Christiana area for almost 27 years. At the age of 18, I enlisted in the United States Army. I spent my 19th, 20th, 21st birthday in a foreign country. At the end of my 3-year enlistment, I was honorably discharged from the Army and I went to work for General Electric Company. During the years at General Electric, I started off as a production worker. I went to school and became an electrician, and in later years, I was promoted to process planner, and in 14 to 16 years, I was either in planning or maintenance and two-room supervisor night shift. I have owned farmland for the last 45 years. I've raised cattle 40 out of 45. I've been on the Board of Zoning Appeals 8 years, and I've come before you people, and I didn't get enough votes to be reappointed. A lady was reappointed in my place. I was on the board 8 years. I never missed a meeting. I was the only veteran on that board, and I was the only one that owned and operated a farm on that board. And I felt like I did a good job the years that I was on that board. And I would like to be reappointed to that, and I would be honored to serve this board and this county as well as I did the United States of America. I appreciate it. I'm proud to say I'm an active member. My wife and I are active members of the Boston Baptist Church. I've always tried to live and do right. I do not drink, smoke, or do drugs. And I've never had any trouble with any law whatsoever. On any questions?
You don't run around with wild women, do you?
No, sir. She would kill me.
She looks a little wild to me.
Did you know Dick Marshall in General?
I knew Dick Marshall well. He was my friend. He was a foreman in the area that I was a planner in. He took care of the people, and I took care of the equipment.
At the Rover
A planner, I'll tell you this as you brought it up, a planner's job is when new models comes through, Mr. Phillips probably knows because he was at work at the plant. A planner's job is if new models are coming through, you have to make sure you have the equipment to run those models, and you have to make sure the people are properly trained to run those models. And if maintenance can't fix those jobs and you can't get involved and fix them, then a planner's responsible for hiring outside contractors to come in and get the equipment where it will produce the product that it's going to run. At one time, we run 92,000 motors a week, and it's 1,200 people. You may not believe that, but we run 92,000 motors a week with 1,200 people running 3 shifts. I was always proud to work for General Electric, and they've been good to me for many, many years. This county has been good to me for many, many years. And I'd really like to be back on this board, and I would not let you down if you appoint me tonight. I'm a very honest, dependable person, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Leslie Smith Jr.
Hello, my name is Leslie Smith. I'm a 30-year resident of Rutherford County. Retired 5+ years ago from Heritage Farms Dairy, where I served as a plant engineer for 15 to 18 years, somewhere in that range. I've lived out in the Blackman community for the whole 30 years I've been in the county, same house. I'm a member of the PBA. I've been serving on that board for 8 years now. And this is one of the most important committees that I think that we have. I mean, because the Board of Zoning Appeals really looks out for the community and tries to track how the ordinances goes and making sure that things are moving forward. And that's really all I've got. Y'all have seen me before, so. Any questions?
Any questions?
This one, Les, you're going to be faced with some, just like the question that this committee's being faced tonight. You've got good candidates, but you can only vote for one of them. And there are going to be times on the BZA when your heart wants to do something, but your mind tells you you can't because of some legal requirements. Are you going to disappoint people and follow rules and regulations, or are you going to go with your heart and do what people want to do instead of what rules and regulations dictate that you do?
That's probably the most important question that you could have asked, because I think where you've got to keep in mind the community that you're in and the people that you're serving, you're still governed by the zoning ordinance, and that's what you have to go by. And so you try and blend the two. As you know, at Heritage Farms, we have rules and regulations to go by, and you cannot vary from them. And I spent 21 years in the Navy, so rules and regulations are nothing new to me. So same thing with building a new justice center. We had a max budget that we couldn't go over, and we got the most that we could for that money, which is quite a bit. But you would have to go with, the ultimate decision factor has to be what the rules and regulations state, what the ordinance is, unfortunately, in some cases.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. William Harper.
Gentlemen, lady, my name is William Harper. I'm a honorably discharged captain in the Army Reserve. I've been here 10 years. Grandchildren brought us up from Florida. Granny said they need us. And my background is what I count on the most. When we moved out to Long Island, to Nassau County, it was a sleepy little village that had truck farms and potato farms. They're all gone. The population of Nassau County is now 1,300,000, 1 million more than the county here, and I've watched Nassau County grow. I-495 is the longest parking lot in the world, and it would make I-24 look like the Indianapolis Speedway, even when it's packed. I saw growth, and I saw things that should not have happened and things that did happen in Nassau County. And my wife and I moved here. We love it. We love the people. And I see the growth happening in Murfreesboro. I see apartments going up. I see private homes going up. And I do not want to lose the character that you have here. The people are wonderful in their culture. I know I'm a Yankee with that expletive on the front of it because I didn't go back. But I can bring wealth and experience just by living through it all. I'm also on the beer board. I'm an elder in my church, and I'd be very happy to serve you.
Any questions for Mr. Harper?
I'll ask you the same thing. There are times BZA will make decisions based upon input from the public. Sometimes that public input opposes what is being proposed, but maybe that proposal meets all of our regulations, and you'll have to make a decision whether to approve that rezoning request or not. What would you do? If everyone in that room says don't do it, but everything that you're looking at says you have to do it, what would you do?
I can explain to you that in the beer board we have to make decisions on opening a new business, and you have to look at what is the law and what they bring to it. I would have to go by regulations.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Harper. Okay, at this time, the chair will take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate all three and move that we vote for one.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. call the roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson,
Mr. Harper?
Commissioner McAdoo,
Mr. Cardwell.
Commissioner P,
Crown.
Commissioner Phillips,
Smith.
Commissioner Stevens,
Harper.
Commissioner Turner,
Mr. Harper?
Commissioner Gooch,
Mr. Harper.
4 for Harper, 2 for Crowell, and 1 for Smith.
Mr. Harper, thank you for your consideration, and we will take your name at the full commission on August the 16th at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, sir.
And everyone else, we really appreciate your interest
Amen.
in this. Thank you so much. Okay, next we will fill the vacancy on the beer board to fill the unexpired term of Jared Barrett. This term will expire in October 2018. We have 2 applicants, Mr. Leslie Smith Jr. and Mrs. Renee Curtis. We'll do the same as we did before and ask each candidate to let us know why you're interested in this position and then take some questions if there are any. Mr. Smith.
Again, Leslie Smith. I've been an alternate on the beer board for 8 months now. Haven't missed a meeting. Sometimes I've sat at the table, sometimes not. And I would just like to continue that association and be a permanent member on the board. Understanding I got to come back in October to reapply.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Mrs. Curtis.
Good evening. My name is Renee Curtis, and this half of the row is mine. The other half of the row is my neighbors. Lifelong from Christiana. The reason why I want to do this is I am a very effective communicator, leader. I'm interested in the Rutherford County government and our community. When I was, some of y'all might not remember this, but in the 70s, there was, I know, careful. In the 70s, I sat on my porch in Christiana listening on WGNS about a race with Carlton and Buckner. Do y'all remember that? It was a mess. And I hear my daddy say, you know, if you don't like it, do something about it. Get involved. So that's what I try to do. I'm involved. I've been with the Election Commission since 2005. I'm an election officer at Buchanan. I ran for school board in 2004 when she was 6. Now she's a junior at UT. And he was little. She learned how to tie balloons during the election. I lost to Mr. Donald Jonigan, but he was a good school board member, and it was worth it. He was great. So right now I'm just asking for your support. I'd love to get on there on the beer board. I can listen and I can implement. So,
Good
any
job.
questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Curtis. And at this time, the chair will take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we move forward with these 2 candidates and we vote for one and move them forward to the full commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Mr. Smith.
Commissioner McAdoo,
Mr. Smith.
Commissioner P,
Curtis.
Commissioner Phillips,
Smith.
Commissioner Stevens,
Smith.
Commissioner Turner,
Mr. Smith?
Commissioner Gooch.
Mr. Smith. Ms. Curtis, we really appreciate your interest, and there's something out there for you to help serve. Plenty of opportunities. Mr. Smith, your name will be submitted to the full commission on August the 16th at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, won't we turn right around and re-advertise Mr. Smith's opening for the alternate?
So we will announce that vacancy tonight. So unless there's any questions.
But see, this person who's sitting there now serves through October. So the new person would serve in November. So Becky, when should we announce it? Should it be September announcement or October to announce it? You can do it now knowing it's going to happen, even though you don't have to do it probably until at least another month, but either way is fine.
Well, he will be on that vacancy till October, starting I guess now through October.
Through October.
And then we'll have to reappoint him or someone else.
Yeah, in November,
in November.
to be effective November.
But they're all talking about his
The
alternate.
alternate position is open right
Oh,
now.
excuse me. Oh, the alternate position is open?
He has the alternate
He's the
position
alternate.
now.
Oh, okay.
So I will go ahead and announce a vacancy on the alternate of the beer board. Anything else?
Oh, for the alternate vacancy.
The alternate,
Yes, sir,
yeah.
you're right.
Next, we will fill a vacancy on the Correctional Work Center Board to fill the unexpired term of Virgil Gammon, and this term will expire on January 2019. And we have two applicants, Mrs. Angela Ford and Mr. David Puckett, and we'll call on Ms. Angela Ford to make a statement.
Good evening. My name is Angela Ford. I've been in Rutherford County since 1986. Been in the same house since 1988 and never been on a board in my life. It came on my heart this year to be on a board. I work with Revolution Health Center. I'm a community outreach director. So when I came to put an application in for a board, because I really didn't care which board I would help with, but I noticed the Workhouse Center was open, and the reason why I chose it is because I've been at juvenile detention ministering for 9 years. My mom started the ministry 24 years ago in July. So I go there on the 2nd, 4th, and the 5th Saturday of the month. And, you know, it's an honor and privilege for me to be there, you know, with the children, because they need to know that they're valuable. You know, they need to have hope. They have to have peace. They need something to look forward to. So that's why I chose the work center, and I can relate to people from all walks of life. I mean, and the things that I've been through in my life and overcame, and through my work experience, you know, because my mom came from a dysfunctional family, I came from a dysfunctional family, my children came from a dysfunctional family, and I have, thank you, overcome so much in my life that I just want to spend the next, I have a good 20 years just helping everybody that I can in any way. I'm very positive, very upbeat. I'm the most thankful, grateful person you'll ever meet. Very honest, and I have a lot of courage and strength. That's all I could think of at this moment.
Well, good job. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I have a dysfunctional family also. Are there any questions for Mrs. Ford?
You have a dysfunctional committee.
Any questions for Mrs. Ford?
I have a question for each applicant. Hypothetically, if the mayor decided we no longer needed the workhouse board, would you be willing to resign your position if he asked the committee members to disband?
Of course. I mean, if he says we don't need a board anymore, I mean, why would, of course. And here's what else I was thinking too, that this seat ends by January. So I thought that's just a very short term where if I was given the opportunity, you know, you could see how I work and I could check out the board and be helpful.
Thank you, Ms. Ford.
Thank you.
Mr. Puckett?
Yes, my name is David Puckett, and I'm a resident of Rutherford County for 55 years. And grew up down the street from Mr. Ketchum on City Avenue. But I retired 7 years ago after 40 years in the criminal justice system. That involves being a military policeman, a deputy sheriff here in Murfreesboro, a police instructor at Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy, assistant district attorney in Williams County, and assistant district attorney at Rutherford and Canyon County. Earlier this year, I was asked to serve on the Citizens Board at the Workhouse to interview inmates that applied for the work release program. I was very much impressed with that program. This opening came up, and I thought I would be an asset to the board. Thank you.
Any questions?
And yes to your question, I resign.
Any other questions? Okay, the chair will take a motion.
Same motion, nominate both, vote for one.
Second. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Becky, if you call the roll, please.
Commissioner Johnson,
Mr. Puckett?
Commissioner McAdoo,
Mr. Puckett.
Commissioner Peay,
Puckett.
Commissioner Phillips,
Puckett.
Commissioner Stevens,
Puckett.
Commissioner Turner,
Mr. Puckett.
Commissioner Gooch.
I'm gonna vote for Ms. Ford, so she have a vote. But anyway, you lost, so, thank you so much for your interest. I know you're an asset to the county somewhere.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Puckett, your name will be submitted to the full county commission on August the 16th. Okay. We will, I guess, just confirm and announce the appointment of a judicial commissioner, Savon Cole.
I need a motion.
Do we need is there a motion to,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve it.
okay, approve, is a
Move
second?
forward to the commission.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes. We will announce 2 vacancies on the Code Enforcement and Adjustment and Appeals Board. We'll announce 4 vacancies on the Audit Committee. This will be a school board member, a road board member, a citizen, and a CPA. On your iPad, you will see a list of our litigations. If you have any questions or comments, we can take those at this time. 8th, we have compensation for Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Commission. This time I call on Commissioner Robert Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That came to my attention a few months ago. I've really been thinking about this and looking at it a lot. Our planning commissioners and the Board of Zoning Appeals members spend so much time preparing for meetings, going to training, answering phone calls, and they do a lot of work, and they make a miserly amount of $100 per meeting for that work. So I think they're grossly undercompensated. And then I also was asking our finance director about some of our other boards too, and looking at the amount of their compensation. And some of them, like $50 for the meeting. By the time you drive in and pay for your taxes and so forth, you're almost in the hole with that. So I would like us to look at increasing the amount that we pay for the people who serve on our boards and commissions, but certainly the planning and the Board of Zoning Appeals, because what they make for the time that they put in is just a miserly amount. I think they certainly deserve more than what they make. This chart that Ms. Nolan prepared for us shows how many members are on each of the committees, and then how many meetings each of those committees has per year. And I just asked her to increase them all by $50, and you can look over on the very right, far right side and see what the total would be with the Social Security amount that comes out for what they would increase our budget if we decided to increase any of those. So I just think that we're about to start a new term. I don't know if there's going to be new planning commissioners or Board of Zoning Appeals members coming up. I just feel like it's a good time for us to at least talk about this. I think that we need to compensate the people who are working on these boards fairly, and the amounts that they're getting paid are just a miserly amount for the amount of time that they put in.
Okay, so you see where the first column is the current pay, and then the proposed pay is the second column. What discussion do we have? Commissioner Pete?
I don't have a problem with increasing these at the level he's mentioned, but I recall the last time we looked at doing this, when you do it, you've got to change all of them the same, and I don't know that that involves the county commissioners' pay along with it, since we're on committees and boards too. And I'm just wondering, would that affect our pay also? If it does, it's going to bring a lot more talk.
Commissioner Stevens, have you had any research?
I did. I asked Lisa to look into that, and she got with our county attorney. But she said that for the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission, and I didn't ask her about all the other ones because they're all separate from ours, but she said those are separate, and that the county commission can determine the membership, the terms, and also set the compensation for those. So it's independent from ours. For example, if you wanted to increase like the school boards, then it would affect the road board and also the county commissions as well. But these are independent committees that are tied to our compensation.
Is the recommendation just for planning and BZA at this time? And the other boards are just for information?
Well, this was just for information and discussion. I mean, you look at the amount that everybody's making on there, I wouldn't have a problem increasing all of them. I think it's been 10 or 20 years since they've been increased.
Do you know how long it's been, Mayor, since they were increased? That was my next question. He beat me. I know it's been at least a decade, I think,
I don't remember it being done since I've been here.
because it hasn't been
I
since
know we
we've been.
talked about it once, but then we got into this business with the school board, road board, and the commission, and we didn't do anything with those groups.
I think it's been 20 years.
Yeah, because it hasn't been since I've been up here.
I think it was in 98.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna be voting no, because it's kind of taken away from the citizen involvement, and I don't think we've had any problem getting a number of people that apply for the job. So I'm gonna vote no. I give my vote away real early.
Okay, let's go ahead. Robert, are you putting this in the form of a motion at this time?
Well, I move that we increase the pay for the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission to $150 per meeting.
So you're just looking at those two, not the others?
For now, yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can I ask a question before the second?
Well, I need a second before we ask the question.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Sorry.
I'm a member of the Planning Commission. Do I have a conflict of interest? Do I need to refrain from voting?
I don't think that you do, because like 20 years ago, when the county commission increased their pay, I mean, we had to pay for it. I mean, we're the only one that could vote for it.
Mayor, any opinion?
Well, when you get to the commission, there's 3 commissioners, so when you take it all the way to, so 3 people, if you couldn't vote, we'd have 3 people out of it. But I don't think there's a problem here.
Since I don't have a conflict of interest, let me just say, Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson is absolutely correct with the way he's thinking, but the other part of that is there are 4 members on the Planning Commission who must be commissioners that have to go through hours of training every year to qualify for this. And their compensation is less for that committee than they are for any standing committee. And I'm thinking that that commission does as much or even more sometimes than the other standing committees that we have. And it's not optional. These commissioners have to serve on this committee. So from that perspective, I think there is an undercompensation, and there has been for years. And that does sound like a conflict of interest, and I'm sorry for that. And just for that, I probably won't vote. But I think that the motion is appropriate, and I would recommend that we do approve it and forward it on to budget.
Commissioner McAdoo?
I like his idea, but I don't like the idea of just pulling 2 out. I think we should look at all of them and bring it back. Each and every one that we think we should raise, we should do it at one time. Because for an example, to me, recreation is now getting $50, and they're only going to be raised to $100, which $50 won't even probably cover their transportation and clothes and whatever. But we may have some other things out there. So instead of just pulling out 2, I would like to look at all of it and have it brought back at the next meeting.
Make an amendment to the motion.
We'll make an amendment to that effect.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have an amendment to add all of these.
Look at all committees,
Okay.
everything we got, put it on a sheet of paper, spreadsheet or whatever. And look at the ones that we really think we should increase and just bring the entire package back to the steering committee. Let us look at it, the entire picture, instead of just picking out a couple.
Okay, so if the amendment passes, then it actually goes back to coming up with a whole list.
Right.
Let me ask Robert, is this a whole list? Or is this a partial list?
I think this is all the ones that are in our control. There's other committees and things, like there's a records commission that I'm on. The state law caps the compensation for that at $25.
Okay.
But that's all you can pay is $25. I think these are the ones that we have control over.
So,
We send it
Mr.
on the budget and work on it before then, because I'm not sure if this has to pass before the next term starts or not.
Oh, okay. I have no problem sending the budget down so they can study it. But we still need to look and make sure that this is all we got.
Well, I have no problem increasing all of them, but I just didn't know if there was enough support out there to increase all the committees, because if it's been 20 years since it was increased, and like you said, $50, by the time you drive down here and pay your taxes, you're almost in the hole.
And that's part of the reason we do not get a lot of people to put in for agriculture, extension, recreation, building codes, or whatever. You know.
Well, before we can move forward, if that's your wish to go ahead and approve this whole list, I need you to withdraw your amendment and change the verbiage of your amendment to add all of these and send everything to budget.
Well, I would love to do that, but I want to make sure there's not anything else out there. And that the whole list maybe go through our finance department, our legal department and everything, and all this be brought back to be a package. So whatever I do, it'd be legal binding and I can move on.
Well, the mayor's going to review the list and see if he feels like this is everything that's... My concern is if Commissioner Stevens is right, I don't think it has to be done before the new term, but he did have a question about that.
Can we just send it on the budget with the two and then add on other ones to the budget?
I might lose it in the budget.
Mayor, the insurance committee compensated?
They are.
What about the PBA?
No.
No compensation.
Insurance committee is not on.
They don't, but you know how much they make.
Not listed as the insurance committee.
The insurance committee's not.
No, it's on August.
Well, I mean, I think those are two valid points. I mean, the insurance committee and the PBA is a heavy responsibility.
But the PBA currently is not compensated.
Never has been. So they're really only doing that, and we've got some great members on there without compensation. Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Well, Commissioner McAdoo, it appears that the insurance committee is not on here. Obviously, I think that would be needed to put on the list. And the PBA is not compensated at all.
So why can't we just do like I said, just bring back the entire list?
Well, I feel like we've got the entire list here.
Do we control the school?
Well, we don't have the insurance committee.
I just wrote it on here.
How much they make you? Let us all know.
How much are they compensated? $100.
Whenever it's featured.
So if, you know, your amendment could raise that to $150 from $100.
Well, it looked like you just giving each one a $50 raise anyways.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
Is the prudent thing to do that we table this for further study until...
That's up to the committee.
That's my thoughts.
Well, his amendment would do that.
Yeah, my amendment would table it to next
So
month.
basically, his amendment would nullify this other then.
Is that what you want to keep, Mr.
I want to
McAdoo?
keep.
Okay, any other discussion? Commissioner Stevens, you have any thoughts on the amendment?
I think when we send it on the budget, and get our answers there. And let them look at it more in depth.
Okay, any other discussion? Yes, sir.
A yes vote to this amendment will nullify this others all the way around, correct?
But your amendment is to amend the motion to look at all committees' compensation and bring it back to steering.
Correct.
You can see it next month.
So we'll see it next month.
Next month.
Is there a problem with timing at all?
That's what I'm
as to when this has to take effect, or?
I don't think that...
It could be done at any
It
time?
can be done anytime. You'll just have to do a budget amendment to take care of the additional costs.
If there's no other discussion, I'll have Becky call the roll on that, please. And this is for the amendment.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
No.
Commissioner Stevens?
No.
Commissioner Turner?
No.
Commissioner Gooch?
No.
Four no, three yes.
Okay, so we're back to the original motion. Does anyone want to make an amendment to add the insurance committee? Or Robert, would you like to put that in your original motion?
Well, the original motion was just for the two. Just for the two. For now.
Oh, that's right.
But we can get budget committee to look at it and add whichever ones we want to then or not add then.
Okay, so they can, we're approving the Board of Equalization,
Board of
Me,
Zoning
no, the
Appeals.
Planning Commission, more.
BZA and the Planning
To
Commission.
me, those two do the most work and are the most unfairly compensated.
Okay, and then the Budget Committee can obviously look
And,
at all of
and,
this.
I mean, I would be fine with increasing all of them. I don't know if the support's there for that. I don't want to sink the whole thing, but those two are the ones that really need it the most.
I think you might get more support if everything is on here.
I think you really seriously look at the PBA people if we're going to do this. Now, they can turn it down, I guess, if they choose to.
Is there a reason why they haven't been compensated in the past that you're
I
aware
don't know,
of?
this was in place before I was here, and we've never added any compensation. They've never asked for any. They've done it willingly.
How often do they meet?
Well, they, at least a month, once a month they've been, and more on occasion. Over the last 3 or 4 years, it's been more than once a month.
Commissioner P.
We have to have a BZA member here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind hearing your thoughts on that, if it'd be all right with the committee.
I've been on the
BZA, excuse me.
Again, Leslie Smith, I've been on the PBA for 8 years. The first 4 years, we had one meeting a year. There was nothing going on in the county. So there would basically be no cost for that year. I mean, we basically elected new officials, or the president or chairman. But 4 years ago, when we started on the Justice Center, we were meeting on a weekly basis. Or there were subcommittees of which I was part of, meeting on a weekly basis. We traveled to Nashville every other week at personal expense. And my case, in this case, they had to pay for parking sometimes. So yeah, there's a lot of time goes into it. And as we move forward with redoing the old Justice Center, there's going to be a lot more meetings, a lot more traveling. So yeah, I think the compensation would be appropriate. And nobody's there for the money. This just offsets some of the stuff that we're doing. So.
Well, I just wonder, is there a reason, like, does the statute that authorizes the public building authority say that they're not to be compensated?
No.
Is there a reason?
I don't think that's in there.
Well, I'd like to make an amendment to my motion to include them and make their pay like $150 a meeting as well.
Okay, so this is going to be a new motion, and you're going to list everything on here, plus the Public Building Authority and the Insurance Committee?
Well,
Well, you haven't included the rest of these. You're going to bring those back.
Well,
I think he's adding all of them.
are you just going to change your motion, if it's okay with the second, to,
I'll make the motion that we send them all with the proposed amounts on this sheet, including the insurance committee and the public building authority.
Okay, are we withdrawing the original motion?
yes. And who seconded that?
I did.
Mr. Turner? Okay, so your new motion is to include, my understanding, is to include this list in addition to the Insurance Committee and the PBA.
Yes.
Did we cost for the county commission too? Because how long has it been since the commission had a change in?
Well, that was 20 years also, but I was leaving that out of this.
Okay, but if we put the commission there, you're going to have to think about the school board. I'm pretty sure there's a linkage there.
That's
And
why I
the
was
School board and the
asking,
road.
because that came up,
the
but I
road-
didn't
and the
know
road board.
how that gets tied
Is
in.
the insurance committee at 100 now?
Yes, sir.
And the PBA's at nothing, so,
It has a domino effect.
and
Yeah, that's why I was trying to figure out how does it tie in.
You see the complication we got And my amendment would have given us time to look at each and every one of these committees before the next month. That's all I was trying to do. And now it failed, and we're going around a circle and coming back to my amendment.
And Commissioner Turner, did you second the new?
I did second the
Okay.
new one.
The motion has nothing to do with county commission compensation at this time.
Not
Right.
this motion.
It's just these.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll call for a vote.
Okay, the motion is increase all committees listed by $50 per meeting, including the Risk Management Committee to increase by $50 per meeting and include the PBA at $150 per meeting.
Yes.
Okay. You want a roll call?
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Johnson,
No.
Commissioner McAdoo,
No.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Seeing as how it's not just the planning commission and the BZA, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to vote and say yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch.
Yes.
5 yes, 2 no.
Okay, motion passes.
Now, all this is send it to budget, right?
Right.
It's going to budget. Our bonds for elected officials, I'll call on Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our CTAS representative, Doug Vodery, floated an interesting idea to me about using insurance instead of bonds, and it's kind of a very difficult discussion. But our insurance director's here, and I would like to ask her a few questions, if that's okay.
That's okay.
So, you'll come to the table, please. So for all of our countywide officials, they have to get some kind of bond or be insured in case they have some, mishap in office where money disappears or whatnot. And the county has to pay for that before the person takes office. And the system we've been using is that each person gets a bond. And we've got the cost that Ms. Street emailed to me today for each of the offices. And I wanted to ask her and our committee, do we want to continue doing it the way we always done it, or do we want to look at possibly doing insurance instead to see if we can save some money on those? And is that,
Sure. So right now, we carry, from an insurance perspective, we carry $475,000 in crime coverage with a $25,000 deductible. And that would be where the actual coverage would come into play if we went the insurance route. The challenge with the insurance is the policy limitations, exclusions, and provisions written in it. And we've had firsthand experience on that. Whenever the events happened with Robert Arnold, he had both a bond and we had the insurance coverage in place. And I filed claims against the bond for Robert Arnold, and I filed against the insurance for Robert Arnold and Joe Russell as employees under employee dishonesty. The insurance did not cover, and we actually received $80,171.12 from the bond. And that represented lost revenue of $59,525, overtime by Human Resources of $2,048, legal costs incurred by the Ethics Committee of $12,138, and additional meeting for County Commission of $6,459. And the reason that the insurance didn't pay was we had actually moved from ACE to BRIT, which is our current carrier, for the crime coverage, and you have to file within 60 days of the end of the policy period in order for the claim to be accepted. So that was the first reason for the denial, because the events began in 2013, and we did not file a claim until years later whenever they were no longer the carrier. The other was the dishonesty based on the language of the insurance did not occur within the scope of their position. Because it was a separate company, it was not within the scope of the sheriff or with the HR administrator job responsibilities to secure that particular product. It was excluded under that. So you can see how the language can come into play. So my recommendation is that we would stay in the bond process. It was a much simpler process to get the bond claim approved. It was much broader in terms of what we could file against. We do have a restitution clause within that because we can't profit from it. It's only intended to make us whole. So we have already recovered $33,792.25 in restitution that was awarded to us by the court system, and so that has offset the $52,500. And if we continue to receive any more restitution, then at that point we would need to turn that back over to the Hartford, which is the bond writing company. We paid, just quickly, we paid at last, from 2014 forward, we have paid $43,871 in bonds. Of that, the trustees' bond alone represents $32,157 in premium. So you can see that for everyone else that we have bonds on, the premiums are generally less than $1,000. Our highway superintendent was $1,380, but most ran about $940 for a $100,000 bond.
Commissioner Johnson.
What would the monetary difference be, bond versus insurance?
So we would not want to do away with our crime policy that we already have in place anyway. With Brit Global, we would want to keep that in place because there's other coverages that extend under that beyond just employee dishonesty. We have had a claim under the crime policy. That was a question that you asked me. I researched it further. It was in 2008 and it derived from the school system that we have, and we recovered $16,000, a little over $16,000 at that time from that particular policy. But there's other aspects of that policy that we have in place, so we would keep it in force. I mean, it has a premium alone of $966,000 a year.
So you're saying we've got policy in place, so we wouldn't have to have the bond?
You wouldn't have to have the bond up to a certain limit. Now, the one for the trustee exceeds what our policy is, so we would have to have it for him in particular. Because once you go to that situation, you have to have an insurance in place of $400,000 or more, which we currently have today. But it's at $475,000, so that wouldn't cover our trustee.
Well, explain to me again why the bond did not cover all our costs.
The bond did cover. The insurance company is the one that denied it. The bond paid everything that I had filed under the bond, just the $80,000. The insurance didn't cover because the events that began with the e-cigarettes was in 2013, and the policy coverage goes from July through June, and you would have to file it. So say it's 2013, you would have to file it within 60 days of the end of the policy period in 2014. And we actually did not file that until 2017 when everything came to light. So the policy was no longer in force and it had no coverage provision available because of timeliness of claim filing. Had it been in place, however, they said that furthermore it wouldn't have paid because of the exclusion that they were not performing the scopes and duties of their job, which led to the financial impact to the county.
So you said this was with the old company?
This is with
because
ACE.
we had a cutoff date in, 2013, I believe you said?
Right, the last policy was 13-14.
So the new policy didn't cover any of this because it started under the old policy?
That's correct, that's right. So we evaluated.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it's all about liability and who owns it, yeah. And so we actually did an evaluation for that coverage as well to see if it would have any coverage available to us. And the only way that we could pursue that would be through the court system and to get a declaratory judgment in our favor in order for us to actually get any type of gain from the insurance policy. And the estimated cost exceeded what we had in terms of lost revenue, so it wasn't a good business decision for us to pursue that.
Well, hopefully we won't run into that problem again.
I hope so
But
too.
it might be something to look at when we go to renew our coverages.
It's pretty standard language, so, and you have to remember, the more you get under cover, the more your premiums are, so you have to look at what the right balance is.
Commissioner Johnson.
Okay, so basically, the reason they wouldn't take the coverage for the HR is because there was no ownership of the claim, is that right? Is that what you're saying?
You're talking about the insurance company?
Correct.
Because it was filed after the policy had terminated, and because what they were doing was not within the scope of their job.
That's what I was saying, no ownership.
Right.
Okay. So your recommendation?
Is to stay with the bond process. Now, there is a $150,000 bond requirement for employees that aren't specifically required to have a set limit, and we do utilize the insurance policy for that $150,000 employee blanket bond, which is everybody else other than elected officials, basically, and Ms. Nolan. And then our coroner, those are the only two that are not elected officials.
Okay.
You need a motion, sir?
If there's a motion, we'll take it.
I'll make a motion that we accept her recommendation.
Second.
Well, I mean, absent of a motion, we'll, I guess, stay with the bonds.
Right.
So we don't really need a motion for that, but we can do it if we want to.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, 'cause she was just presenting.
Right,
info.
she's presenting information, so if we stay the same, we don't do anything, we stay with the bond system.
Okay.
I will say that, I know that we've had discussion about bonds versus insurance before. That it came up a couple years ago whenever we were looking at the bond for Mr. Odom as well. So it may be worthwhile at some point for there to be some type of motion that puts it in the documentation from County Commission that our intended purpose is to secure bonds on the state statute required.
It's much easier to follow a paper trail. if
That's
that
right.
res-
That's
that
my
res-
point.
if that resolution is in
Agreed.
effect. So I'd recommend we go ahead and vote.
Okay. So we have a motion, Commissioner Johnson, to stay with the bond system, and who seconds that?
I do.
Mr. McAdoo. Any other discussion?
One thing I'd like to point out is that in your language, you may want to include that we can utilize the insurance coverage for the $150,000 employee blanket bond that's required.
Commissioner Johnson, okay to put you
That's
in
fine.
motion? Okay.
That's fine.
I have got a question about the bonds, but it's not specifically related to this, so I would suggest we go ahead and vote, and then I'll bring that up.
Okay, that's fine. Any other discussion on this motion? Becky, if you just read the motion, and then we'll...
Accept the recommendation of Ms. Street and stay with the bond system, although the county can use the insurance coverage for the $150,000 blanket coverage required.
Employee blanket bond.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Commissioner P., did you have something on bonds you want to bring up?
Yeah, when I was on planning, if there was a subdivision going in, we were requiring the developers to issue bonds for the roads. And we had some that decided they weren't going to pay when we called them. And then we made a change. Jeff, you may can strike me out on this and explain it, but since she was here talking about bonds, I thought I'd ask.
I'm not sure I can get it 100% correct, but we did away with the bond system and made them put a cash up front so we can recall that without having to go through a bond, because no one was honoring the bond system. Nobody was. The banks weren't paying anything else. So they put cash up, some kind of a certified financial statement from the bank that they're good for that, and we can call that money if that happens.
Kind of like a bail bonds.
Pretty much.
Kind of surety bond.
That's a pretty good way to put it, pretty much.
I know in the general liability, sometimes the contracts will require that we're named as an additional insured. Because I'll get coverage letters for that sometimes.
It happened, Mr. Smith alluded to the building authority not meeting for a number of years. That was during that slowdown period. And we experienced some issues at that time, Robert, when people were in some financial crunches. But now that things are more than reversed, they probably wouldn't have that same type of an issue. But that whole bond system is a thing of the past for the planning commission.
Anything else? Any other business?
I'd just like to, I know we went through this litigation really quickly, but I can only see 19 on here, and just a year ago, we had 30-something, I think, and I think once again, our county attorney and our mayor has just done a wonderful job in and getting these things down and under control, and I just think it needs to be acknowledged, settling those cases and getting that liability off of the county's back, and that's just an amazing job, and I'd like to thank both of those, the county attorney and the county mayor both
For the first time, the recently resolved list is longer than
Isn't that amazing?
the active list.
It's really good.
The closed list has got
Yeah.
30 on it now.
Yeah.
And we've
Very
got that
good.
printed for the record.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Yes.
I was hoping that the county attorney would be here. CPAS sent out this about the schooling or the class that newly elected county commissioners will have to take.
Yes.
Re-elected officials, that's not applicable to them, the way I understand it. Is that correct?
This is new legislation.
Just
Maybe-
new-
maybe,
newly- the way I-
elected mayor
the way-
knows exactly.
The way I understood it, it says either being newly elected county commissioner or somebody
I
elected.
think
more
there are
permanent.
some requirements that they have
Yeah.
to.
I think it's just a newly
Yeah,
elected.
okay.
The others got grandfathered in.
I just didn't want to be arrested for anything illegal.
Any other business? If not, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.